Reading a story that somebody else wrote, but it's got some interesting information. So the family we're honoring today is the McGee, M-C-G-E-E, and the McGee, M-A-G-E-E family that has lived and worked in Aztec for 7 generations. Of course, not all members of this intergenerational family remained in Aztec or even in New Mexico, but they all represent the pioneering and enterprising spirit that we recognize today, specifically in the family of James and Sherry McGee of Aztec, who are representing the 5th generation of this prolific clan.
The Hispanic residents who lived down in the Rio Grande Valley and in Santa Fe since the 1600s had never settled up here. In 1776, they had the Dominguez Escalante expedition, which went through the area around Hesperus, Mancos, that area, and all over the place, but that's as close as they got to our part of the country, kind of. And then about 30 years later, they established a trade route from Santa Fe to Los Angeles that used portions of that same trail. And we know it as the Old Spanish Trail. In the early 1870s, there was a lot of pressure put on the federal government to take this area out of the Hickory Apache Reservation. It was about, I think it was like 2 months before this that Custer kind of lost it at the Little Bighorn. That may have entered into President Grant's thinking because he took it out of the Hickory Reservation and opened it up to public settlement. And in 1875, before it was ever opened, these 2 brothers who were camping up in the area where Durango is located, Durango didn't exist until 1880, they came down to look the area over. And Mr. William Hendrickson there, he wrote a letter in 1893 and described how they went over to the Mancos, down the Mancos to the San Juan, and then back up the San Juan to the Animas. They spent one night at the Aztec ruins and then went back up to their diggings in southwest Colorado. Well, it was just 2 years later that Mr. Hendrickson here is identified as one of the founders of the town of Farmington. This is probably the very first mention of Farmington in any newspaper anywhere.
So we're getting this black powder, and it comes in 4 grades. The big chunks they used in their cannons. This is 2F they used in the muzzle-loading muskets. 3F they would use for smaller caliber, and 4F, which is very fine ground up black powder, that would be used for priming. So we dump this down the barrel. And sometimes the soldiers would get confused. They put the bullet in, then they put the powder in, then they were in trouble. Now we use a little Kleenex for wadding, won't put a bullet in. We'll stuff this down here to keep the powder in. And this is called a starter, short starter and long starter. So we get this down into the barrel. Then you got to pull the ramrod out, and they had to do this in unison. That's why they drilled a lot. And we'll get the Can you imagine doing this and bullets flying to the right, to the left, over you and under you? Then they'd have to insert the bayonet. Now, when you hold the gun like this, We got a primer. This is a priming horn. We'll put a little powder in. Now, if I've done everything correctly, and that's a big if, it's gonna go off. But I could have a misfire. But let's see what happens. Yeah, we'll aim at that person over in the outhouse there. And here we go.
Wow! I like that.
Right, John.
Yeah, I thought that'd be more smoke though, but that was great, man. I'll tell you that.
Well, it was primarily agricultural. It was sheep and cattle and whatever was growing around here, like apples in the fall and stuff like that. Seasonal business. So it was a lightly run, but the problem was they had to transfer the freight from standard gauge cars in Durango to narrow gauge, and then in Alamosa, they had to transfer them back to standard gauge, and they made the shippers along the line here pay for the double transfer, and so the shippers all got together in 1922, and they demanded that the railroad change this, and the railroad obliged, and they changed the gauge in one weekend in 1923. They ran a train that night from Friday night was when the passenger train left real late at night here, like 1 in the morning or something like that, to go up to meet the train in Durango going east to Denver at 6 or 7 o'clock. Well, that train ran. It was the last standard gauge train to run. They had all the standard gauge cars in the consists that were going up to go up to Durango, and then Monday morning at 6 a.m. or excuse me, Saturday morning at 6 a.m. they went and worked. They had everything laid out, whatever they needed, and they just simply pushed the tracks into about here. And there was narrow gauge Monday morning for the Monday morning passenger train. All these engines were dismantled piece by piece. They were brought in piece by piece. They were dismantled and taken out.
Thank you, Helen. You're thinking of us, thinking of our community, thinking of Jack. And we'd like to give you this little plaque.
Thank you.
In recognition of your generous donation. One of the things that came, if you want to stay around, we're going to back it into this building. And this building came along with the Model TT. Helen also donated the structure to put it in order to preserve it. And this was moved in a couple of weeks. So thank you, Helen, very much.
And I will give you the title and keys.
Thank you very much.
Now you can back it in.
No, I can't. Thank you so much.
The little black convertible there, we bought it in Waco, Texas, and of course the 62 Hawk I bought new, and actually the little 50 convertible was the first car I actually got to drive at 56. My dad bought it in Albuquerque, and that was my car for 4 or 5 years, and then I wore it out, and Bill, my younger brother, drove it through high school. And then he got through with it, and my youngest brother, he drove it for a while. So that little car got some serious miles.
Serious teenage boy miles, too.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice car for high school.
It was. It was a neat, I tell you. It's not very good in Alamosa, Colorado in the wintertime when you got a date. It's got an under the seat heater, and they don't work real good.